My son took my keys and told me I should be buried already. Called me an old idiot who only gets in the way. After 30 years of sacrificing everything for my family, working double shifts to pay for his college, his wedding, even his mortgage down payment. After losing my wife just 6 months ago and thinking my children would be my support, my son took my keys from my own house and threw me out like garbage. But what he didn't know was that this old man still had some fight left, and connections he never imagined. Before I continue, subscribe and hit the notification bell because we publish new stories daily. Leave your like and tell us in the comments which city and country you're watching from. Main story: my name is John. I'm 57 years old, and I thought I knew what family loyalty meant. For 3 decades, I built my construction company from nothing. Started with a pickup truck and a toolbox. Ended up with 47 employees and contracts worth millions. Every dollar I made went to my family. Every sacrifice was for them. When my wife Sarah was diagnosed with cancer 2 years ago, I spent $400,000 on treatments, sold to rental properties, liquidated my retirement accounts. I would have spent every penny I had to keep her alive. She passed away 6 months ago, and I thought my 3 children would understand that grief changes a man, that losing your partner of 32 years leaves you vulnerable in ways you never expected. My oldest son David is 31. MBA from Northwestern, works in finance, makes good money, but never enough for his taste. Always asking for loans, always promising to pay back next month. In the last 5 years, I've given him $350,000. His wedding costs me $80,000. His house down payment was $60,000 from my pocket. His wife's car, his kids' private school tuition, his country club membership, all me. My daughter Lisa is sweet girl, or so I thought. Married to a lawyer who makes decent money but likes to spend more than he earns. One paid for their wedding too. $75,000 for 1 day. Their kitchen renovation, $30,000. Their European honeymoon, $15,000. Lisa always had a way of asking that made it impossible to say no. My youngest son, Mark, is 20, still trying to find himself. As they say, I've been supporting him completely for 7 years. His apartment rent, $1,200 a month. His car payment, his insurance, his credit card bills, his student loans. He owes me over $200,000 if anyone's counting, which apparently no one was. After Sarah died, I moved in with David temporarily, just until I could figure out what to do with our family home. Too many memories. There, too much emptiness. I thought staying with my son would help both of us grieve together. I was wrong. The first week went fine. I helped with the kids, fixed things around the house, tried to be useful, but I noticed things. Small things at first. The way David's wife Jennifer would roll her eyes when I suggested taking the grandchildren to the park. How she'd sigh dramatically when I asked what time dinner would be ready. The way David would change the channel without asking if I was watching something. Week 2, Jennifer started making comments. John, maybe you could eat your breakfast a little earlier. The kids need the kitchen table for homework. John, could you move your medications from the bathroom counter? It makes the space look cluttered. John, the guest room really needs to stay neat because we might have Jennifer's mother visit. I bit my tongue. Told myself they were adjusting. That grief makes everyone irritable. Week 3. The comments became demands. Dad, you need to start looking for your own place. This arrangement was supposed to be temporary. David said this while I was helping his 8-year-old son with math homework. While wearing the watch I bought David for his college graduation. In the kitchen of the house, I helped him buy. If you're enjoying this story, subscribe, hit the like button, and share in the comments a similar experience you've had. Week 4, things escalated. I came home from the grocery store. Yes, I was buying groceries for their family to find my belongings packed in boxers. Neat, organized boxers stacked in the garage like I was. Some tenant being evicted. Dad, we found you a nice senior community. It's only 15 minutes away. They have activities and medical staff on site. It'll be good for you. Jennifer stood there with a brochure like she was selling me a vacation package to hell. I looked at David, my firstborn, the boy I taught to ride a bike, to throw a baseball, to balance a checkbook. Son, is this really what you want? Dad, You're 57, not 90. You're perfectly capable of living independently. And honestly, having you here is putting stress on my marriage. I need to think about my family first. His family first. As if I hadn't been thinking about his family for 31 years. I called Lisa. Surely my daughter would understand. Lisa, your brother wants me to move out. I was hoping maybe I could stay with you and Tom for a while. Silence. Then, Dad, I don't think that's a good idea. Tom's really busy with work right now, and we barely have space for ourselves. Maybe David's right about the senior community. It might be fun for you, like summer camp for adults. Summer camp for adults. My daughter compared losing my home to summer camp. Mark didn't even answer his phone. Texted back 3 hours later, can't talk now. In meetings all day. Meetings. The boy who hadn't held a steady job in 5 years was suddenly too busy with meetings to talk to his father. So I looked at the senior community. Sunset Manor. Sounds peaceful, right? Wrong. It was a warehouse for people whose families had written them off. Monthly rent, $4,000, for a studio apartment with a kitchenette and a view of the parking lot. The activities director was a 23-year-old girl who spoke to everyone like they were toddlers. Now, Mr. John, wouldn't you like to join our afternoon crafts? We're making friendship bracelets today, but I toured it anyway. Smiled and nodded when David and Jennifer came along, pointing out the amenities like they were doing me some enormous favor. The medical staff on site, the meal plans, the transportation services, everything designed to make families feel less guilty about warehousing their elderly relatives. That night, I made my decision. I'd move to Sunset Manor. Not because I wanted to, but because I needed time to think, time to plan, time to remember exactly what kind of man I used to be before grief made me soft. The moving day was a Tuesday. David rented a small U-Haul truck. We loaded my boxers, my few pieces of furniture, the photographs of Sarah that Jennifer had already taken down from the walls. My grandchildren watched from the window, probably told to stay inside so they wouldn't have to say goodbye to Grandpa. As we finished loading, David handed me an envelope. Dad, this should help with your first few months at Sunset Manor. And I want you to know, this doesn't mean we don't love you. It's just better this way. Inside the envelope was a check for $5,000. $5,000. After everything I'd given him, he handed me $5,000 like a tip for good service. If you're enjoying this story, subscribe, hit the like button, and share in the comments a similar experience you've had. Sunset Manor was exactly as depressing as I'd expected. My neighbor was an 84-year-old woman named Mrs. Patterson, whose son visited once a month and spent the entire time on his phone. Across the hall lived Mr. Rodriguez, whose daughter had moved him there after he fell and broke his hip. She said it was for my safety, he told me, but I think it was for her convenience. I spent the first month in a fog, going through the motions, eating meals in the communal dining room where everyone complained about their medications and their ungrateful children, attending mandatory activities where we played bingo and watched movies from the 90s, pretending this was living instead of just waiting to die. But grief has stages, and after the numbness comes anger, and I was very, very angry. I started making phone calls. To my lawyer, first, Marcus Webb, a man I'd known for 15 years. He'd handled my business contracts, my estate planning, even my divorce from Sarah's sister years ago when she tried to claim part of our property. John, good to hear from you. How are you holding up? Marcus sounded genuinely concerned. I've been better, Marcus. I need to review some financial documents. Loans I've made to my children over the years. I want to understand my legal options. Of course. Do you have documentation of these loans? That's where my construction background paid off. I'd always been meticulous with paperwork. Every loan to my children had been documented, not formal contracts, but clear records. Check stubs, bank transfers, emails where they promised to pay me back text messages. Even handwritten I.O. used that David had given me for some of the larger amounts. Marcus reviewed everything over the next week. His conclusion was simple. John, your children owe you approximately $743,000 in documented loans. None of these have been repaid according to any agreed schedule. Legally, you have grounds to demand immediate repayment. $743,000. I knew I'd been generous, but seeing the total made my anger crystallize into something harder, something more focused. But I wasn't interested in just money. Money was replaceable. Trust wasn't. Respect wasn't. The casual cruelty they'd shown me wasn't something that could be fixed with a check. I called my accountant next, Patricia Keem. Another long-term professional relationship. She'd handled my business taxes, helped me structure my investments, advised me on the best ways to support my children financially. Patricia, I need you to prepare a comprehensive report on every dollar I've spent on my children over the past 10 years. Every payment, every gift, every expense I've covered. I want exact figures and dates. John, that's going to be quite a project. Are you sure you want to go down this road? I'm sure. The report took Patricia 3 weeks to compile. The final number shocked even me. $1,200,000. Over 10 years, I had given my children more than $1 million. College tuitions, weddings, house down payments, car purchases, loan payments, credit card bills, vacations, medical expenses, gifts for grandchildren, home renovations, business investments that failed, debt consolidation loans. The list went on for 17 pages. $1,200,000, more than most people earn in their entire lifetimes. And what did I get in return? A studio apartment at Sunset Manor and a $5,000 check. If you're enjoying this story, subscribe, hit the like button, and share in the comments a similar experience you've had. But I still wasn't ready to act. I needed to understand exactly what I was dealing with. So I hired a private investigator, someone to look into my children's current financial situations, their assets, their lifestyle choices. I needed to know if they truly couldn't afford to include their father in their lives, or if they simply chose not to. The investigator's report arrived after 2 weeks. It made for fascinating reading. David's household income, $230,000 annually. Their house, which I'd helped them buy, was now worth $800,000. They had 2 new cars, a boat, and a timeshare in Florida. Jennifer spent $400 a month on her personal trainer. David belonged to 2 country clubs. Their children attended private schools that cost $15,000 per child per year. Lisa and her husband Tom earned a combined $310,000 annually. Their house was worth $600,000. They'd just returned from a 3-week vacation in Italy. Lisa's Instagram account, which she apparently didn't know, I could see, showed expensive restaurants, designer handbags, and jewelry that cost more than most people's cars. Mark, my youngest, was supposedly struggling to find his direction. According to the report, he'd been supplementing the allowance I gave him by working part-time as a bartender at an upscale restaurant. Nothing wrong with honest work, except he'd been telling me he was taking business classes and looking for entry-level positions in marketing. The bartending job paid well enough that he could have been supporting himself if he'd wanted to. None of my children were struggling financially. They were living well above average American standards. But they'd convinced themselves, and tried to convince me, that they couldn't afford to help their father in his time of need. That's when I knew what I had to do. I called Marcus Webb again. Marcus, I want to file formal demands for repayment of all outstanding loans to my children. Full amounts, with interest calculated from the original loan dates. John, that's going to create some serious family drama. Are you prepared for the consequences? The drama already happened. Marcus, they just didn't tell me about it. The demand letters went out on a Thursday. Certified mail, signature required. Each letter detailed the exact amount owed, with supporting documentation attached. David owed $350,000. Lisa owed $220,000. Mark owed $173,000. David called first. That same evening, Dad, what the hell is this? You can't be serious. I'm completely serious. Son, these are legitimate debts. You borrowed this money with promises to repay it. I'm simply asking you to honor those promises. But Dad, we thought these were gifts. Family, helping family. Did you think the money I spent on your college was a gift? Did you think the down payment on your house was a gift? Because I have emails where you specifically called them loans and promised to pay me back when you got on your feet. Silence. David, you threw me out of your house, packed my belongings like garbage, and shipped me off to a senior center. Now you want to talk about family helping family? Duh, please. We can work something out. You don't understand the financial pressure we're under. I understand perfectly. You make over $200,000 a year. You have a boat. Your wife has a personal trainer. Your pressure is self. Lisa called an hour later, crying. Daddy, please, don't do this. We love you. We just thought you'd be happier around people your own age. Lisa, you compared moving me to a senior center to summer camp. If you think so little of me, surely you won't mind treating our relationship as a business arrangement. But Daddy, we can't afford this right now. Tom's practice is just getting established. Tom's practice billed over $400,000 last year. Lisa, I've done my research. If you're enjoying this story, subscribe, hit the like button, and share in the comments a similar experience you've had. Mark didn't call. He texted, "This is bullshit, Dad. You're ruining our family over money." Primera texted back, "You ruined our family when you decided I was disposable. The money is just how I'm keeping score." For 2 weeks, my phone rang constantly. Sometimes my children called individually, sometimes together. They tried anger, guilt, bargaining, and threats. They promised to visit more often if I'd drop the demands. They said they'd help me find a better living situation. They offered to pay me back gradually over many years. I listened to everything. Then I told them exactly what I wanted. I want full repayment within 90 days, or I file lawsuits against all 3 of you, not just for the money, but for damages related to elder abuse and emotional distress. There, you can't sue your own children. Watch me. But I wasn't done. While my children scrambled to figure out how to pay me back, I made other arrangements. I contacted the owners of Sunset Manor and made an offer to purchase the entire property. It was a small operation, only 48 units, and the owners had been struggling financially since the pandemic. They accepted my offer of $2.8 million. Yes, I had that kind of money available. My construction business had been very successful, and I'd invested wisely over the years. I'd been living modestly and giving most of my income to my children, but I still had substantial assets they knew nothing about. The purchase went through quickly, cash sale, no financing needed. Suddenly, I owned the place where my children had warehoused me. My first act as owner was to fire the condescending activities director and hire a staff that treated residents with dignity. My second act was to renovate the common areas and upgrade the meal service. My third act was to reduce everyone's rent by 40%. Mrs. Patterson cried when I told her she'd be getting a $1,500 refund on her next month's rent. Mr. Rodriguez asked me 3 times if I was serious. The other residents couldn't believe that someone actually cared about their comfort and dignity. But the best part was calling David to give him my new address. "Dad, you're confusing me. You're still at Sunset Manor." "Yes. Own it now." Turns out the old man you were so eager to get rid of had more resources than you realized. Silence. In fact, I'm expanding, purchasing 2 more senior living facilities in the area. Apparently, there's quite a market for treating elderly people with respect and dignity. Who knew? More silence. "David, your first loan payment is due in 67 days. I suggest you start liquidating some assets. Maybe sell that boat you can't afford." I hung up before he could respond. Lisa showed up at Sunset Manor 3 days later. Unannounced, I was in my office. Yes, I had converted one of the unused spaces into a proper office, reviewing expansion plans with my architect. "Daddy, we need to talk." "Hello, Lisa. You should have called first. I'm quite busy these days." She looked around my office, taking in the architectural drawings, the financial reports, the business plans spread across my conference table. "What is all this?" "This is what a non-disposable old man does with his time. Lisa, I'm building a business empire focused on senior care. Turns out there's a lot of money in treating elderly people like human beings instead of burdens." "Daddy, I came to apologize. We handled everything wrong. We should have been more sensitive. You should have been more honest. You didn't want me around because I was inconvenient, not because I needed care." "That's not true." "Lisa, your house has 4 bedrooms. You could have offered me space, even temporarily. Instead, You compared my situation to summer camp and told me your husband was too busy to deal with his She started crying. Real tears this time, not the manipulative ones from our phone call. We thought you'd be happier here, around people your own age, with activities and medical support. Did you ask me what would make me happy? Or did you decide for me? If you're enjoying this story, subscribe, hit the like button, and share in the comments a similar experience you've had. We decided for you. You're right. We were selfish. Yes, you were. And now you owe me $220,000. Daddy, we don't have that kind of money available. Then you'll need to make it available. Sell something. Refinance your house. Take out loans. Figure it out. But why are you doing this? We're family. I stood up from my desk and walked to the window. Outside, I could see some of the residents sitting in the garden I'd had installed. Mrs. Patterson was reading to her great-granddaughter who'd come for a visit. Mr. Rodriguez was playing chess with another resident. They looked content. Dignified, Lisa. When your mother was dying, I spent every resource I had to keep her alive. When you needed money for your wedding, your house, your husband's business, I gave it without hesitation. When David couldn't afford his children's school tuition, I paid it. When Mark needed support while he found himself primera provit ed italiano. I did all of this because that's what family does. I turned back to face her. But when I needed family support, when I was grieving and vulnerable, you all decided I was too inconvenient to deal with. You packed my belongings and shipped me away like I was some stranger you'd grown tired of hosting. We made a mistake. You made a choice. Now you get to live with the consequences. Mark finally showed up the following week, not alone but with David. They found me in the main dining room, having lunch with several residents and discussing plans for a new computer lab. Dad, we need to talk. Privately. I excused myself and led them to my office. Gentlemen, how can I help you? David looked uncomfortable. Mark looked angry. Dad, this has gone too far. You're embarrassing the family. I'm embarrassing the family. By asking for repayment of money you borrowed. By acting like some kind of vindictive old man. You bought this place just to spite us. I bought this place because I recognized a business opportunity. Senior care is a growing market, and most facilities treat their residents terribly. I saw a chance to do well by doing good. But Dad, you're making us look bad. People are asking questions about why we put our father in a nursing home. It's not a nursing home, it's an independent living community. And you didn't put me here. You threw me out of your house and suggested I come here. I simply made the best of your decision. Mark finally spoke up. Dad, you're being unreasonable. We can't all come up with these huge amounts of money right now. Mark, you owe me the least of anyone, $173,000. That's what I've given you over the years to support your lifestyle while you avoided taking responsibility for yourself. Those weren't loans. That was you being a supportive father. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out a folder thick with documents. Mark, would you like me to read some of your text messages? Here's one from 2 years ago. Dad, I promise I'll pay you back as soon as I get a real job. Thanks for covering my rent again. Or this one. I know I owe you a lot of money. I'm going to make it right. I swear. His face went red. Or we could look at the handwritten IOU you gave me for $15,000 when you wrecked your car and needed money for a replacement. You wrote, I will pay Dad back by Christmas, and signed it. That was different. How was it different? Mark, because you're our father. Fathers are supposed to help their children, and children are supposed to care for their parents. But when I needed help, where were you? David tried a different approach. Dad, let's be practical. Even if we legally owe you this money, taking it from us will hurt your grandchildren. Is that really what you want? David, your children attend private schools that cost more per year than most families spend on housing. Your oldest son has a college fund worth over $100,000. Your daughter takes riding lessons that cost $800 a month. Don't tell me that asking you to repay your debts will hurt my grandchildren, but it will impact their lifestyle. Good. Maybe they'll learn that money doesn't grow on trees, and that family members shouldn't be treated as disposable. If you're enjoying this story, subscribe, hit hit the like button, and share in the comments a similar experience you've had. The deadline for repayment came and went. None of my children paid what they owed. So I did exactly what I'd promised. I filed lawsuits against all three of them. The local newspaper picked up the story. Local businessman sues own children for $743,000. The article was factual, but devastating. It detailed my children's incomes, their lifestyles, and the circumstances that led to the lawsuits. It mentioned that I'd been placed in a senior living facility by my children, and that I'd subsequently purchased the facility and was expanding into senior care as a business. The story went viral on social media. People shared it with comments like this: "Is what happens when children forget who raised them?" And "Good for him. Family works both ways." My children were mortified. David's country club asked him to resign. Lisa's friends started treating her differently. Mark's girlfriend broke up with him when she learned about the situation. They tried to settle out of court, offering to pay me back over 10 years with low interest. Primera refuset. They offered to pay me back over 5 years. I refused. They finally offered full payment over 2 years. I accepted, but with conditions. The repayment schedule was non-negotiable. Any missed payment would result in immediate judgment for the full remaining balance, and they had to publicly acknowledge that the money had been legitimate loans, not gifts. More importantly, I wanted them to participate in family counseling, not because I thought it would fix our relationship, but because I wanted a neutral third party to witness their attitudes and behavior. The counseling sessions were enlightening. Dr. Rebecca Martinez, a family therapist with 30 years of experience, listened to all sides and asked pointed questions. "David, can you explain why you felt it was necessary to pack your father's belongings and present him with a fait accompli about moving to a senior facility? We thought it would be easier for him if we handled the details." Easier for him or easier for you? Silence, Lisa. Your father says you compared his moving to a senior living facility to summer camp for adults. Can you help me understand that comparison? I was just trying to make it sound less scary, like it might be fun. Did you consider asking your father what would make him feel less scared? More silence. Mark, you've received financial support from your father for 7 years while you explored different career options. During that time, did you consider how your choices might be affecting his retirement plans? I didn't know he was planning to retire. Did you ask? The counselor's conclusion, delivered in our final session, was damning. This family has a long-standing pattern of one-way generosity that has created unhealthy dependencies and unrealistic expectations. The children have been conditioned to view their father's resources as endlessly available, while viewing their own obligations to him as minimal. She continued, the father's decision to formalize the repayment of loans and to purchase senior living facilities represents a healthy assertion of boundaries and self-advocacy. The children's resistance to these boundaries suggests they still don't understand the fundamental imbalance in this relationship. My children left that session in tears. Not tears of remorse, but tears of frustration that they hadn't been validated in their But I was done caring about their tears. If you're enjoying this story, subscribe, hit the like button, and share in the comments a similar experience you've had. The repayment plan worked exactly as structured. David sold his boat and his timeshare, took out a home equity loan, and made his payments on time. Lisa and her husband refinanced their house and liquidated some investments. Mark finally got a full-time job and moved into a smaller apartment. Within 18 months, I had been repaid in full, $743,000, plus interest and legal fees. The total came to just over $800,000. But the money wasn't the real victory. The real victory was building something meaningful with my life. I now own 6 senior living facilities across 3 states. We employ over 200 people, and we've revolutionized the way elderly people are treated in residential care. Our facilities have waiting lists, not because we're cheap, but because we treat our residents with dignity and respect. Mrs. Patterson now serves on our resident advisory board. Mr. Rodriguez teaches woodworking classes in our expanded activity center. We have residents in their 90s who are learning to use computers, writing memoirs, and starting small businesses from their apartments. I've also established a foundation that provides financial assistance to seniors who have been abandoned by their families. We help with housing, medical expenses, and legal fees for those fighting elder abuse. The foundation is funded by profits from my senior living businesses, and it's already helped over 300 people. My children have never apologized for their treatment of me. They've resumed contact, but it's formal and distant. They call on holidays and send generic birthday cards. Their children visit occasionally, supervised by their parents, who clearly brief them on what topics to avoid. David's oldest son, my grandson, Jeremy, is now 14. Last month, he asked if he could spend a weekend with me at Sunset Manor. Not because his parents encouraged it, but because he was curious about the business and wanted to hear stories about my construction company. We spent Saturday morning reviewing the architectural plans for my newest facility. He asked intelligent questions about construction costs, zoning requirements, and staffing needs. That afternoon, he helped me teach some residents how to use tablets to video call their families. Over dinner, he said something that surprised me. "Grandpa, my dad told me you sued him for money, but he never explained why." I thought carefully about my response. "Jeremy, sometimes adults make decisions that hurt other people. When that happens, there have to be consequences, or the bad behavior continues." Did my dad hurt you? Yes, he did. But more importantly, he made choices that showed he didn't value our relationship. That's something I couldn't ignore. Do you still love him? I'll always love your father, Jeremy. But love doesn't mean accepting disrespect, and it doesn't mean pretending that hurtful behavior is okay. He nodded like he understood. That evening, Jeremy helped Mrs. Patterson set up a video call with her son in California. He showed Mr. Rodriguez how to use the tablet to look up woodworking tutorials on YouTube. He treated the residents like interesting people instead of inconveniences. After he went to bed, I sat in my office and thought about legacy, about what we leave behind and how we're remembered. My children will remember me as the father who sued them for money. That's their choice and their burden to carry. But Mrs. Patterson will remember me as the man who gave her dignity in her final years. Mr. Rodriguez will remember me as someone who valued his skills and experience. The hundreds of residents across my facilities will remember me as someone who saw them as complete human beings, deserving of respect. My employees will remember me as a boss who paid fair wages and treated senior care as a calling, not just a business. The families helped by my foundation will remember me as someone who stepped in when their own relatives failed them. If you're enjoying this story, subscribe, hit the like button, and share in the comments a similar experience you've had. That's the legacy I'm building now, not as someone's disposable father, but as someone who refused to accept being discarded. My name is John. I'm 57 years old. I thought I was headed toward a quiet retirement, maybe some travel with Sarah, definitely more time with grandchildren. Instead, I discovered that being written off by your children can be the beginning of a new chapter, not the end of the story. I wake up every morning in my penthouse apartment at Sunset Manor. Yes, I converted the top floor into a proper residence with a full kitchen and city views. I have breakfast with residents who've become genuine friends. I spend my days expanding businesses that matter. I go to sleep knowing that I've built something meaningful out of betrayal. My children took my keys and told me I should be buried already. They called me an old idiot who only gets in the way. They were wrong about the old part. 57 isn't old. They were wrong about the idiot part. Building a multi-million-dollar business empire takes intelligence, and they were definitely wrong about the getting in the way part. I'm not in anyone's way anymore. I'm building my own road, and if my children ever want to walk that road with me, they know where to find me. But they'll have to approach with respect, honesty, and genuine remorse for how they treated me when I was vulnerable. Until then, I have plenty to keep me busy. 6 facilities and counting, 200 employees, and hundreds of elderly people who deserve to live their final years with dignity. I thought family meant everything. I learned that chosen family sometimes matters more than blood family. I thought money didn't matter between relatives. I learned that money is often the only language that makes people pay attention to their behavior. Most importantly, I learned that being discarded by your children doesn't mean your life is over. Sometimes it means your real life is just beginning. So, to anyone listening who feels forgotten by their family, who's been treated as disposable by the people they sacrificed everything for, who's been told they're too old to matter, you're not done yet. You get to decide what the next chapter of your story looks like. Make it count. But the story doesn't end there. Success has a way of attracting attention, and not all of it is welcome. 3 months after my children finished their repayment plan, I received an unexpected phone call. It was from Jennifer, David's wife, the same woman who had packed my belongings and handed me a brochure for senior living like she was doing me a favor. "John, I think we need to talk." "Hello, Jennifer. What can I do for you?" "It's about David. He's been struggling since all this happened. Drinking more, staying late at work to avoid coming home. The kids are asking questions about why Grandpa doesn't come to family dinners anymore. I found this interesting. For months, they'd treated me like I was the problem. Now that there were consequences, suddenly they were concerned about family relationships. Jennifer, what exactly are you asking me to do?" "I think you should consider forgiving the family debts and trying to rebuild the relationship for the sake of the grandchildren. The debts have already been repaid in full. As for rebuilding the relationship, that's not something I can do alone, but you could make an effort. You could invite us to visit or offer to have the kids stay with you sometime." "Jennifer, when I was grieving my wife's death and needed family support, where was that effort? When I suggested taking my grandchildren to the park, you rolled your eyes. When I offered to help with homework, you complained about clutter. Now you want me to make an effort. That was different. We were all adjusting to a difficult situation." "No, Jennifer, that was you showing me exactly how little you valued my presence in your family. I'm not interested in pretending that didn't happen." She hung up without saying goodbye. But Jennifer's call made me realize something important. My children weren't learning from their experience. They were just waiting for things to go back to the way they were before. They wanted their father's resources without his presence, their inheritance without their obligations. That's when I made another strategic decision. I called Marcus Webb, my lawyer, and asked him to draft a new will. Not because I was planning to die anytime soon, but because I wanted my children to understand the long-term consequences of their choices. The new will was simple and clear. My estate, now worth approximately $15 million, thanks to the success of my senior living businesses, would be divided as follows: 50% to my foundation for abandoned seniors, 25% to establish a scholarship fund for students pursuing careers in elder care, 20% to be distributed among my employees as retirement bonuses, 5% to be divided equally among my grandchildren, to be held in trust until they turned 30. My 3 children would inherit nothing, but I didn't just file the will and forget about it. I wanted them to know about it, so they could make informed decisions about their future behavior. I invited all 3 of them to lunch at an upscale restaurant downtown, neutral territory where they couldn't storm out dramatically without causing a scene. David arrived first, looking nervous. Lisa came 10 minutes later, apologizing for the delay. Mark showed up 20 minutes late, as usual, without any explanation. "Thank you all for coming," I began once we'd ordered. "I wanted to discuss some important family matters with you." "Dad, if this is about more money," David started. "It's not about money you owe me. It's about money you won't be in." I slid 3 identical envelopes across the table. Each contained a copy of my new will, with a summary letter explaining my reasoning. They read in silence. David's face went pale. Lisa started crying immediately. Mark looked confused, then angry. "Dad, you can't be serious," Lisa whispered. "I'm completely serious." "But we're your children. We deserve to inherit from you." "Lisa, deserving an inheritance isn't about biology. It's about the relationship you build with the person who's leaving you their legacy." David sat down his copy with shaking hands. "Dad, this is vindictive. You're punishing us for one difficult period in our lives." "One difficult period? David, you threw your grieving father out of your house and shipped him off to a senior center. That wasn't a difficult period. That was a revelation of character. We were overwhelmed. We didn't know how to handle the situation." "You didn't try to handle the situation. You tried to make it disappear." "There's a difference." Mark finally spoke up. "So what, Dad? You're leaving everything to strangers. I'm leaving my money to causes that matter to me. 2 people who've shown me respect and loyalty. To my employees who've helped me build something meaningful, to students who want to dedicate their careers to caring for elderly people with dignity. What about your grandchildren? Lisa asked. They don't deserve to be punished for our mistakes. Your children will receive trust funds that will pay for their education and give them a good start in life. But they won't inherit enough to become entitled and lazy. They'll have to work for their success, just like I did. If you're enjoying this story, subscribe, hit the like button, and share in the comments a similar experience you've had. David tried a different approach. Dad, what do you want from us? What would it take for you to change your mind? I want you to understand what you did to me. I want genuine remorse, not just regret that there are consequences. I want you to acknowledge that your treatment of me was wrong, not just inconvenient or poorly timed. We've already said we're sorry. No, you said you wish things had gone differently. That's not the same as being sorry. Then tell us what being sorry looks like to you, Lisa said. I thought about this carefully, not because I was planning to change my will, but because I wanted them to understand the magnitude of what they'd done. Being sorry would mean acknowledging that you treated me as disposable when I was vulnerable. Being sorry would mean recognizing that your decisions were selfish and hurtful, not just poorly executed. Being sorry would mean making changes to ensure you never treat another family member the way you treated me. But how do we prove that to you? You don't prove it to me. You prove it to yourselves and to your own children. You teach them that elderly family members deserve respect and care, not warehousing. You volunteer at senior centers. You advocate for elder rights. You become the kind of people who would never dream of throwing away a family member who needed support. They sat in uncomfortable silence. But most importantly, I continued, being sorry would mean accepting that some damage can't be undone, that some choices have permanent consequences. That forgiveness doesn't erase the past or entitle you to the same future you would have had if you'd made better decisions. The lunch ended awkwardly. They paid their own checks. A small thing, but I noticed over the following months, each of my children tried different approaches to changing my mind about the will. David attempted the business approach. He researched my senior living facilities, prepared investment proposals for expansion, and suggested ways he could contribute his financial expertise to growing the business. It might have been impressive if it hadn't been so transparently motivated by self-interest. Lisa tried the emotional approach. She sent me long letters about childhood memories, family traditions, and her hopes that we could rebuild our relationship. She included photos of the grandchildren and updates on their activities, but she never once acknowledged the specific ways she had failed me when I needed her. Mark took the anger approach. He showed up at Sunset Manor unannounced, demanding to know why I was destroying the family over money. He accused me of being bitter and vindictive. He said I was using my wealth to manipulate people and that everyone could see through my act of being the wounded father. Mark, I said calmly, when you needed money for rent, for car payments, for credit card bills, was I manipulating you with my wealth, or was I being a supportive father? That was different. How was it different? Because you offered. We never asked you to cut us out of your will. You're right. You never asked me to cut you out of my will. You just asked me to disappear from your lives when it became inconvenient to have me around. But the most interesting response came from someone I hadn't expected, Jeremy, David's oldest son. Now 15, he had been following the family drama with the sharp awareness that teenagers often have for adult hypocrisy. He showed up in my office on a Saturday afternoon, having taken 2 buses to get there. Grandpa, can we talk? Of course. Jeremy, what's on your mind? I've been thinking about everything that's happened with the family, and I have some questions. I gestured for him to sit down. Is it true that you gave Dad and Aunt Lisa and Uncle Mark hundreds of thousands of dollars over the years? Yes, it's true. And they never paid you back. They never tried to pay me back until I demanded it through legal action. And when Grandma died, they made you move out of Dad's house. I hesitated. Jeremy was still a child, and I didn't want to poison his relationship with his father. But he deserved honest answers. Yes. They decided I would be better off in a senior living community. Did they ask you what you wanted? No, they didn't. Jeremy was quiet for a long moment. Grandpa, I love my dad. But what he did to you was really wrong. Your father was dealing with a lot of stress, Jeremy. People sometimes make poor decisions when they're overwhelmed. But you were dealing with stress too, right? You had just lost Grandma, and you were sad and needed help. And instead of helping you, they sent you away. The clarity of a 15-year-old's perspective was remarkable. Yes, that's essentially what happened. And now they're upset because you changed your will. Yes. But Grandpa, if they didn't want you in their lives when you needed them, why should they get your money when you die? Out of the mouths of babes. If you're enjoying this story, subscribe, hit the like button, and share in the comments a similar experience you've had. Jeremy visited me regularly after that conversation, not because his parents encouraged it, but because he was genuinely interested in learning about business, about life, about the choices that shape who we become. During one of our visits, he told me something that broke my heart and made me proud at the same time. Grandpa, I've been saving money from my part-time job. I want to invest it in your senior living business. Jeremy, you don't need to do that. Yes, I do. I've seen how you treat the people here, how you've made this place better. I want to be part of something that matters. What do your parents think about this? They don't know, and I don't care what they think. I'm old enough to make my own decisions about who I want to support. That's when I realized that my story wasn't just about the children who had failed me. It was also about the grandchild who was learning to be better than his parents. I accepted Jeremy's investment, $500 he had saved from working at a local grocery store. I gave him a proper contract, with ownership percentage and profit-sharing agreements. I treated his investment with the same seriousness I would give to any business partner. More importantly, I started teaching him about business, about integrity, about the difference between earning respect and demanding it. Jeremy became a regular presence at my facilities. He helped with technology training for residents. He assisted with marketing research for new locations. He sat in on staff meetings and asked thoughtful questions about operations and resident care. The other residents loved him. Mrs. Patterson taught him to play bridge. Mr. Rodriguez showed him woodworking techniques. Jeremy treated them like the interesting, experienced people they were, not like burdens to be managed. His parents were not pleased. David called me after discovering that Jeremy had been spending weekends at Sunset Manor. Dad, you're manipulating my son against me. I'm treating your son with respect and giving him opportunities to learn. If that feels like manipulation to you, perhaps you should examine your own relationship with him. He's 15 years old. He doesn't understand the complexity of adult relationships. He understands right from wrong better than you do, apparently. I don't want him involved in your businesses. David, Jeremy is a legal investor in my company. He has rights as a shareholder. If you want to restrict his activities, you'll need to take that up with him, not me. You gave him money to invest. No, I accepted money that he earned and saved independently. There's a difference. But the situation with Jeremy forced a broader conversation about my grandchildren and their futures. I had 5 grandchildren in total. Jeremy was the oldest. David's younger son Michael was 12. Lisa had 2 children, Sarah, 10, and David, 8. Mark had 1 son, Kevin, who was 6. I realized that my decision to leave them small trust funds might not be enough to ensure they didn't suffer for their parents' failures. So I made another adjustment to my estate planning. I established educational trusts for each grandchild that would pay for their entire education through graduate school, including expenses for study abroad, internships, and career training. The trusts would also provide modest living allowances during their college years. But more importantly, I created opportunity funds that would match any money they earned independently, dollar for dollar, until they turned. If they worked and saved, their efforts would be doubled. If they chose not to work, they'd receive only the basic educational support. The goal was to incentive effort and independence, while ensuring they had opportunities their parents' mistakes wouldn't deny them. I also established mentorship programs through my foundation that would give each grandchild access to successful professionals in fields of their choosing. Not just careers counseling, but real relationships with people who could guide them toward meaningful work. When I told Jeremy about these plans, he surprised me with his response. "Grandpa, that's really generous, but I want you to know that even if you didn't leave me anything, I'd still want to spend time with you and learn from you. Why is that important to you? Jeremy, because you're the only adult in our family who treats me like I have a brain and like my opinions matter. Everyone else just tells me what to think or what to do. That conversation crystallized something I'd been thinking about for months. My children hadn't just failed me as a father. They had failed to learn the most important lesson I had tried to teach them, that relationships are built on mutual respect. Not just obligation or biology, but Jeremy was learning that lesson despite his parents' example. And if he could learn it, maybe there was hope for the other grandchildren too. I decided to accelerate their education in family values. I started inviting each grandchild individually to spend time with me at Sunset Manor. Not for visits, but for real experiences. They helped with resident activities, assisted with meal service, and participated in staff meetings where appropriate. Michael David's 12-year-old was fascinated by the construction aspects of facility maintenance. I taught him basic carpentry and electrical work. He helped renovate one of our common areas, learning both practical skills and pride in meaningful work. Sarah, Lisa's 10-year-old daughter, gravitated toward the social aspects of resident care. She organized reading programs, helped residents write letters to distant family members, and created art projects that brought joy to people who felt forgotten. Lisa's younger son, David, was naturally drawn to technology. He helped residents learn to use tablets and smartphones, set up video calls with their families, and created digital photo albums of facility activities. Even 6-year-old Kevin, Mark's son, found ways to contribute. He helped with gardening projects, played simple games with residents, and brought the kind of uncomplicated joy that elderly people often miss. Each of my grandchildren discovered something important during these experiences, that elderly people are still complete human beings with interesting stories, valuable wisdom, and meaningful contributions to make. But more than that, they learned that taking care of family members shouldn't be seen as a burden, but as a privilege and a responsibility. Their parents were not happy about these lessons. If you're enjoying this story, subscribe, hit the like button, and share in the comments a similar experience you've had. Lisa confronted me after discovering that Sarah had been helping residents write their memoirs. Dad, Sarah came home asking why we don't visit Grandpa more often. She said Mrs. Patterson told her that family members who love each other make time for each other, even when it's inconvenient. Mrs. Patterson is a wise woman. But now Sarah is asking uncomfortable questions about why you don't come to family dinners anymore, and why we never visit you. What do you tell her? I don't know what to tell her. She's 10 years old. She doesn't understand complicated adult relationships. Lisa, there's nothing complicated about what happened between us. You decided I was inconvenient and tried to make me disappear. When that didn't work the way you wanted, you discovered there were consequences. Sarah understands this perfectly, but she's judging us based on a child's understanding of right and wrong. Maybe that's exactly the kind of understanding this situation needs. The truth was, my grandchildren were learning lessons their parents had failed to absorb. They were discovering that elderly people deserve respect, that family obligations work both ways, and that love requires action, not just words. Jeremy, now 16, had become my unofficial business partner. His investment had grown to over $2,000 and he was already talking about studying business administration in college so he could eventually take over operations of the senior living facilities. Grandpa, I want to expand the mentorship program. What if we partnered with high schools to create internship opportunities at our facilities? Students could earn service learning credits while learning about elder care, and our residents would benefit from regular interaction with young people. The idea was brilliant. We implemented it across all 6 facilities, creating programs where high school students spent time each week helping with activities, learning about healthcare, and building relationships with elderly residents. The program was so successful that other senior living facilities started asking for guidance on implementing similar initiatives. Jeremy wrote the training manual and helped present workshops for other facilities. But the most important outcome was that teenagers across our region were learning to see elderly people as valuable community members instead of burdens to be hidden away. These teenagers would grow up to become the adults making decisions about their own aging parents. Hopefully, they would make better decisions than my children had. 2 years after changing my will, I received an unexpected visitor. It was Dr. Rebecca Martinez, the family counselor who had worked with us during our court-ordered sessions. "John, I hope you don't mind me stopping by, unannounced. I wanted to follow up on how things have developed with your family." "Not at all, Dr. Martinez. Please, come in." We sat in my office, overlooking the garden where residents were enjoying the afternoon sunshine. "I've been thinking about your case a lot," she said. "It's unusual to see such a clear example of enabling behavior being successfully addressed through firm boundaries. Is that what you think I did? Set boundaries? I think you did something much more significant. You refused to accept being devalued by people who had become accustomed to taking your value for granted." She looked around my office, taking in the business charts, the expansion plans, the photos of residents and staff. "What you've built here is remarkable. Not just the business success, but the model of dignified elder care. You've turned your personal experience of being discarded into a movement that benefits thousands of people. I never thought of it as a movement, but that's exactly what it is. Every family that chooses one of your facilities over a traditional nursing home is making a statement about how elderly people should be treated. Every employee you've trained is carrying those values to other workplaces. Every student who participates in your internship program is learning to see aging differently." Dr. Martinez had a point I hadn't fully considered. My response to being discarded by my children had created ripple effects far beyond our family. "What about my children?" "Primera, ask it. Do you think they've learned anything from this experience?" "Honestly, I think they've learned to be more careful about consequences, but I'm not sure they've learned to be more caring about relationships. They're still focused on what they've lost rather than on what they failed to give." "And my grandchildren." "Your grandchildren are learning lessons their parents never did. They're seeing firsthand what it means to treat elderly people with dignity and respect. More importantly, they're learning that family relationships require ongoing investment from all parties." She paused, looking thoughtful. "John, can I ask you something personal?" "Of course." "Do you ever regret the path you chose? Do you ever wish you had just accepted the situation and tried to rebuild the relationships without demanding accountability?" I considered her question carefully. "Dr. Martinez, if I had accepted being treated as disposable, what would that have taught my grandchildren about family relationships? What would it have taught my children about consequences for their actions? What would it have taught me about my own worth?" "So you have no regrets?" "I regret that my children made choices that damaged our relationships. I regret that they prioritized their convenience over my dignity. I regret that their mother didn't live to see what kind of people they became when tested." I stood up and walked to the window, but I don't regret refusing to accept their treatment of me. I don't regret building something meaningful from the wreckage of their betrayal, and I especially don't regret creating opportunities for my grandchildren to learn better values than their parents demonstrated. Dr. Martinez smiled. "That's exactly what I hoped you'd say. If you're enjoying this story, subscribe, hit the like button, and share in the comments a similar experience you've had." As my story spread through social media and news coverage, I started receiving letters from other elderly people facing similar situations. Hundreds of them. People whose children had warehoused them in substandard facilities. People whose families had taken their money but not their calls. People who felt invisible and disposable. Each letter broke my heart and strengthened my resolve. I decided to publish a book about my experience, not for profit, but to reach people who needed to hear that being discarded by family doesn't mean your life is over. The book, titled Disposable: How I Turned Family Betrayal into Purpose, became an unexpected bestseller. But more importantly, it started conversations in families across the country about how they treat their elderly members. I donated all the book proceeds to my foundation, which had grown to serve over 1,500 people annually. We now operated in 12 states, providing everything from emergency housing assistance to legal advocacy for elder abuse victims. Jerem and I, now 17 and a high school senior, had been accepted to several prestigious business schools, but he surprised everyone by choosing a state university with a strong gerontology program. "Grandpa, I want to study both business and aging services. I want to understand the industry from every angle so I can really make a difference." "Jeremy, you don't have to follow in my footsteps. You should pursue whatever interests you most." "This is what interests me most. I've seen how much impact one person can have when they refuse to accept that elderly people don't matter. I want to be part of expanding that impact. His parents were horrified that he was wasting his intelligence on elder care instead of pursuing finance or law. But Jeremy had learned to make his own decisions based on his own values. The night before he left for college, he came to my office with a wrapped gift. "Grandpa, I wanted to give you something before I go." Inside was a framed photo of the two of us working together in the facility garden, surrounded by residents. But what made it special was the inscription he'd written. "To the man who taught me that respect is earned through character, not demanded through relationship. Thank you for showing me what integrity looks like in action." That photo sits on my desk now, next to pictures of Sarah helping Mrs. Pedersen with her memoir, Michael building a bench for the garden, young David teaching a resident to video call her grandson, and Kevin playing cards with Mr. Rodriguez. My grandchildren had learned the lessons their parents had refused to embrace. They understood that family relationships require mutual care and respect. They had seen firsthand what happens when elderly people are treated with dignity versus when they're treated as burdens. Most importantly, they had learned to value character over convenience, principles over popularity. 3 years after changing my will, David made one final attempt at reconciliation. Not through lawyers or intermediaries, but by showing up at my office alone. "Dad, can we talk? Really talk this time?" "Of course. David, sit down." He looked older, tired in a way that had nothing to do with age. "Dad, I've been doing a lot of thinking about what happened, about the choices I made, about the kind of person I became." "What conclusions have you reached?" "I became the kind of person who throws away his father when it becomes inconvenient to care for him. I became someone who takes generosity for granted and treats love like an entitlement." This was different from his previous apologies. More specific, more personal. "I keep thinking about Jeremy, about the way he talks about you, about the work you do here. He has more respect for his grandfather than he does for his father. And he's right to feel that way." David's voice broke slightly. "I failed you when you needed me most. Not because I didn't have resources or space or time, but because I didn't want to be inconvenienced. Because I cared more about my comfort than your dignity." "David, what are you asking of me?" "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I'm not asking you to change your will. I understand why you made those decisions. I'm asking for the chance to be a better person going forward, to learn from Jeremy what it means to treat you with respect." "What would that look like?" "I want to volunteer here. Not in some token way, but really contribute. I want to learn about the business, about elder care, about treating people with dignity. I want my other children to see me doing meaningful work instead of just complaining about the consequences of my failures." I studied my oldest son carefully. This conversation felt different from all the others, less focused on what he wanted from me, more focused on who he wanted to become. "David, volunteering here would mean taking direction from Jeremy. He's my business partner now, and he has significant authority in daily operations. Are you prepared for your 17-year-old son to be your supervisor?" "Yes. Jeremy has learned things I never did. If he can teach me to be a better man, I'm ready to learn." We started slowly. David came in 1 weekend a month, working with maintenance crews, helping with facility improvements, assisting with resident activities. He didn't try to take charge or suggest dramatic changes. He followed instructions, asked questions, and gradually began to understand what we had built. But more importantly, he began to understand what he had almost destroyed. Thanks for listening to my story. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell. We publish new stories daily, and your support helps us share more experiences like this one. Leave a like, and tell us in the comments what city and country you're watching from. Until next time, remember, family is supposed to work both ways. Respect is earned through actions, and it's never too late to choose dignity over convenience.